views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. As usual, we have a very involved show. First up, we're going to be talking about work sharing programs. Things sometimes are difficult throughout the city. Maybe you can talk to your employer and figure out a way you can share work with an employee and not lose your job. It's an important topic. Next up, we're going to be talking about a new law that mandates that used cars have working airbags. It's something you would always think should be, but believe it or not, it's finally mandatory. And lastly, let's talk swimming. How important is it for our youth and anyone in our society to know how to swim? We'll have somebody on set to discuss exactly what they think we should know about the safeties of swimming. As you can see, we have much to get to, so stay tuned. Today's verdict starts right now. All right, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have with us today State Senator James Skoufis from the 39th District. Senator, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be with you.
First time I had you on the show, so we're excited. And I really have to congratulate you. This is a terrific win for you and really the viewers. Tell the audience a little bit about the Amoros Law, if you could.
Yeah, sure. So I have a constituent family, the Amoros family. They live in Rockland County, very close to where most of your viewers live. And many years ago, the father and mother tragically lost their son to a car accident. It was windy road in the town of Haverstraw in Rockland County. There was a crash and the airbag didn't deploy. Turns out that the used car that the son had bought, Anthony had bought, did not have an airbag in it. Unbeknownst, of course, to Anthony, who in their right mind would buy a car without an airbag in it. And so that tragedy, really was the impetus behind this bill. The family, to their enormous credit, turned the tragedy into action. They approached the legislature. At the time, I was in the state assembly before I was in the Senate. And this bill has been around for many years, and we haven't been able to get it across the finish line. When I got to the Senate, I picked up the bill. I carried it in the Senate. My colleague, Ken Zabrowski, in the Assembly carries it there. And we put a lot of political capital, a lot of weight behind it. We wanted to get it done, finally. Not only on behalf of the family that's spent years trying to do this in their son's name and in their son's honor, but just as importantly, more importantly, for all New Yorkers who are buying used cars. And so what the bill does is very simple. It requires that all used cars have a functioning airbag in them when they're sold. It's not complicated. And the bill simply adds airbags to the list of other required car parts, car accessories. Used cars must have a working seatbelt. Used cars must have working rear view mirrors. Now, used cars must also have working, functioning airbags. And so the used car dealer has to certify that there's a functioning airbag upon the point of sale.
Full disclosure, I've been looking for a nice 1965 Mustang, right? I don't think it's going to happen, but I've been looking for it. I can't imagine there's an airbag in that. So I assume there's some type of either exceptions or something going on.
For antique cars, okay. There's an exception to the law. That's correct.
But basically, if I'm looking for a 1996 Honda Civic and I go to the dealer, the used car dealer, that used car dealer has to make sure that there is a working airbag, and of course the seatbelts are working correctly. right?
Yeah, and so the seatbelts have been in the law for a very long time. We're adding airbags to that list of required parts upon the point of sale. And so yes, new cars, they all must already have working airbags. I mean, that's a given. That's in the law. That's probably federal law. But used cars, unthinkably, here in New York State, it was not required to have a working airbag until this bill became law that we just passed. So the governor just signed this bill literally just a few weeks ago. And now New Yorkers are more protected because of it.
Let's start with the pushback. There's always pushback.
Yeah.
Where and whom was giving you the pushback?
It's the industry, and you'd expect some pushback. I know they don't want the responsibility, the obligation of checking for working airbags, the liability of checking, and so that's where the pushback came from. The Automobile Dealers Association, the used car dealers. And look, I know for a fact the same association opposed mandatory seatbelts back in the day, and so it's really just an unreasonable position to take, and I'm glad that we were able to surmount that opposition.
The reason, by the way, that seatbelt law got passed and the trial lawyers pushed for it. The reason that seatbelt law was passed was because of the cost of injuries to our medical system. And although you could say, well, I have the right not to have a seatbelt, it's my right. We say, no, it's not your right, because driving is a privilege. And if you get into an accident and it's costing society money, we can make you lessen that cost and have a seatbelt. And I'm wondering if we can still equate that here, in that if you don't have if we put a seatbelt in, you put an airbag in, more injuries to those, like this tragic death, and our healthcare system is burdened. I can kind of see that argument also being made, and that's maybe why finally it got through as well.
That's an excellent point. And look, let's make no mistake. I imagine the large majority of used cars that are sold do have working airbags in them. And so we're talking about a responsibility and obligation to make sure that a small minority of these used cars that don't have airbags get airbags or are not sold. But in those cases, yes, you make an excellent point. There's, of course, a cost to society when there is an injury due to an airbag not being in a used car. And so in that sense, this law ought to show some savings on the other side and show societal benefit on the other side. And that's important, no doubt about it.
Senator, who's driving the initial used car? It's the teenager who finally gets their first car. They can't afford a new one, like all of us. They get that used car. They're still kind of getting used to the driving to begin with, So it's just so not that those who are not teenagers are driving used cars, but certainly the younger generation is immediately you need to protect. I just wonder how you test to make sure an airbag is in working condition without deploying it. I'm just curious if that's even a
so I don't know all the technical ins and outs, but my very clear understanding is that it is very easy to test without deploying. By the way, it is very easy to test whether there's an airbag installed in a car or not. I mean, we did not get any pushback even from the automobile dealers on that point, that it was somehow impossible to test.
And lastly, I'm just wondering, in terms of the cost being passed down to the, whoever it is that's buying the car, is there a cost that's being passed down? That's always a concern. Yeah,
look, if there is, it's got to be negligible. We're not talking about, tens and tens of man hours trying to figure out if there's an airbag in a car or not. It's a very easy, quick, simple diagnostic that needs to be run. And look, if there is some negligible cost, so be it.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
The biggest question or the biggest response that I get from people who learn about this new law and learned about the bill when we introduced it and worked on it was, we can't believe it's not already law. Right. It's insane that it was not.
Yeah, I didn't know it. I didn't know that. So, Senator Skoufis, thanks so much. You've been a pleasure. Maybe come back in the next couple of months and give us an update of some more stuff that's going on in your district.
I would love to. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. All right, stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this. Okay, we are back at today's verdict. We have with us Shelley B.Mayer, state senator from the 37th district. Senator, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, my district goes from the Bronx border in Yonkers north, so Bronkers, as we say.
Bronkers. The Bronx really, as Senator, has been hit so hard with unemployment and the issues. The numbers are twice what they are nationally. Tell the viewers a little bit about the shared work program, if you could.
Well, shared work is an old program that was really set up in the days when factories closed during part of the year. But then in COVID, and particularly in places like the Bronx and Yonkers, where you saw large numbers of workers laid off because businesses closed down, it was a real opportunity for people to work half-time or less and get unemployment, but people didn't know about it. And I was trying to persuade the Department of Labor, and I did, go out and talk about this program because people are able to keep their job, keep their benefits, get unemployment, and get a portion of their wages. So instead of being laid off and losing their job altogether, they stayed somewhat less than whole, but in good shape, and the employer retained their employees. So they didn't have to retrain. The people come back now that work has come back. So it's a great program, and people didn't know about it.
All right, so let's give let's give an example. All right, so you have, let's say you have a bar in the Bronx, right?
Yes.
You got about 10 to 15 employees, and the bartender's falling on hard times, right? Not too many people are coming in because of COVID. They don't want to, they're afraid to go inside. It's getting colder. It's November. It's December. He says, I have to let you go. What do you say? What do you say with the shared work program? What do you say to the owner? What could the owner do? Give an example.
Well, the owner could come up with a plan, and if you call the Department of Labor, they will work with you on a plan. And so the employees can't go down to less than 20%. So they have to work at least 20%. Let's say they're working 5 days, they have to work at least 1 day and not more than 60%. So not more than 4 days. So they have to have a substantial reduction in hours. But in return, for paying that reduction, the employee is going to get partial unemployment for the days they're off. The employer is going to keep the employees at a reduced salary, obviously paying less, and has them continuous so that when he comes back in the spring, they haven't found another job. He doesn't have to retrain and go look for 4 more bartenders. And many employers like this because they keep the continuity of, for example, people come in and like their bartender. That bartender's still there.
So has this been in effect for a long time? I mean, I had never heard of it.
Right.
I guess most people don't know about it.
Well, they didn't know about it. And what I found during COVID is there were a few employers who knew about it, largely industrial. But it really applies to what you're talking about, a restaurant, a bar, a small business with 10, 15 employees. And so this says to employees, you can petition your employer to participate in this program. So maybe the employer doesn't want to do it, but and he's not obligated, he or she, but you have a right as a group of employees, if you know that there's going to be a reduction in hours, to petition your employer to say, you should apply for this. This is actually good for employers.
Good for everybody. Now, I understand the employer has 7 days to respond and is not required. So let's start with the 7 days to respond. I don't know if you would know, is this in writing? Do they have to tell them in person?
They have to respond in writing.
Okay.
So they have to really give an answer. They can't just say, I don't feel like it. The reason for deciding to apply or not to apply. And if they apply, the outcome of the application. Look, the other really good thing about this, David, it's easy to do. There is someone at the Department of Labor the State Department of Labor, nothing New York City, the New York State Department of Labor in Albany is very invested in this program. But there's not enough participants. People don't know about it. So they have people who literally will pick up the phone with your bar owner and say, here's how you do it, and walk you through how to do it. And as you say, it's a win-win for everyone, and particularly for example, a good example you gave, now, if there's not outdoor dining and all that, you may want to reduce your staff somewhat, but you don't want to close.
No, you want to keep it, you want to keep going so that you're still in the game, you know?
Exactly.
You may not be necessarily winning, but you're still in the game and you have a chance to win when things turn around. Which
Exactly.
let me ask you, you know, on that topic, your constituents, how are they doing? How are they faring as we are, I don't know, slowly coming out of COVID? I don't know how you would want to phrase it. You know, with your feet on the ground, what's it look like to you?
I think it's a mixed bag, very honestly. In the hospitality industry, it is continues to be a very challenging environment. Yes, people are willing to go out and eat or go to a bar, but it's not like the old days, and you can't count on that. In the people who work in offices, there's a mixed willingness to go back into an office. I see it here, and I'm sure it's true in the Bronx as well. The people that work in the big hospitals in the Bronx, they're back, they're vaccinated. That's going fairly smoothly, but I would say it's a mixed bag, and it certainly doesn't feel like a full recovery by any means.
No, I mean, I will tell you, you know, now we're having the discussion, the courthouse, which is across the street right behind me, and we have full trial work here we're supposed to do. Can't do it. We can't get the trials. The jurors aren't comfortable coming in. The judges aren't comfortable with too many people coming in. So, you know, my office still moves cases and we need to do what we need to do, but things are not back to normal, certainly not in the legal field. And
No.
I'm sure that you can see, and you know, with respect to many of your constituents, that they're hurting in many, many ways.
Absolutely. And we're very focused on individual issues they have: unemployment, housing, food insecurity, and jobs.
Shifting topic for a second, because I've been a little tough on some of my clients who come in who are not vaccinated. Do you find that more and more people are starting to get comfortable getting the vaccination, or is there still pushback? How do you? It's a tough.
There's a lot of pushback in my
There
community. It's a mixed bag.
Mixed
I'm
bag.
the chair of the education committee, so I hear from parents around the state who are resistant to any concept that someday there might be mandatory vaccines in schools. They're very resistant to it. I think it's a mixed bag. I think there's greater comfort than there was. And in the city of New York, you know, where there are mandates in a lot of places, a greater number of people are complying.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate you on a nice kudos for a nice settlement that you procured. Could you tell the viewers a little bit about that?
Sure, I'm very proud of it because we fought for a long time, and it takes persistence, you know, as a trial lawyer, to win these kinds of things. But there were about 250 employees of a big resort hotel in Westchester that was like for weddings and that kind of thing, big conferences pre-COVID. And 250 people were laid off on Christmas Eve 2019, pre-COVID. They didn't get enough notice. Large employers have to give a certain number of days of notice if they're going to lay off a lot of people, because the impact is so great in the community. They did not give enough notice. I went to the Department of Labor. I pushed them. I went to the Attorney General's office, and then I got them a pro bono lawyer. And they brought a proceeding. I got the employees, largely Spanish speaking, who had been there a long time, to come to court and show the judge, you know what, these are real people. And then COVID hit, and there weren't other hotel jobs and other jobs in restaurants and bars to get. And ultimately, after 2 years, with the Attorney General's help, we got over 2.7 million for them in back wages. And
That's wonderful.
It was very satisfying for them to realize the system worked for them.
You know, the economy, it's still not in great shakes. You know that. There's so much more that has to be done. Just final thoughts on where you think we're heading. Up, down, sideways. What's your final thoughts on where we're going with the economy?
I think I'm an optimist. I think we'll get there. We need more people vaccinated, there's no question about it, so that things like the courthouse can be open, like restaurants, bars, that people will feel comfortable. So we're on a trajectory. It's just taking longer than we all had wished.
We'll leave it there. Senator Shelley B.Mayer, thanks so much.
Thank
Doing
you.
wonderful work. Hopefully you'll
Thank
come
you.
back in the next couple of months and give us a little bit of an update.
Happy to do so. Thanks again, David.
All right, stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this. Okay, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have Shawn Slevin is here, from the founder of Swim Strong Foundation. How are you doing today, Shawn?
David, I'm great. Thanks so much for the invite to come and speak with you this morning.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I had mentioned to you off air, I said, well, it would be nice maybe if we had you on sometime right before the summer, because that's when most people go swimming. But the truth of the matter is, you have a lot to say about water that really has, it was really year round. So why don't you just talk to the viewers a little bit about why you're here, if you could?
Sure. So just briefly to introduce Swim Strong, we are a 501c3 not-for-profit in New York City. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary this year. We have met a few milestones along the way. We've taught more than 10,000 people how to swim. We've given more than $1 million in free swimming lessons to families that need that help. We have developed this school-based program called KNOW, K-N-O-W, Before You Go, which speaks about water safety in a variety of ways, focused on the environment as opposed to swimming skills. And we've also initiated legislation to mandate the training of water safety within New York State schools, K through 12.
Now, there's an upcoming bill. I know there's an upcoming bill,
Yes.
S2207 and A728, which aims to make water safety education mandatory in New York State schools.
Correct.
Talk to viewers a little bit about that, if you could.
Sure. So why would we want to do this? Well, if you look around, our world has been changing and becoming much more watery, particularly since Superstorm Sandy, right? Just a few weeks ago, we suffered the impact of Ida. And between New York and New Jersey, we lost almost 50 people due to drowning through that storm. I live in the community of Woodside in Queens, New York. We had 13 people die in their own basements as a result of drowning because of Ida. If they had taken our programming, that never would have happened. So we understand that our world is changing. It's becoming more watery. As a result of that, we all need to understand water more deeply, no pun, or maybe pun intended, and actually develop a new relationship with the water. Water safety training is as important. We equate that with buckling up your seatbelt when you get into a car, and that needed to be mandated also.
How do you do that? Now, I also grew up in Queens myself. I was in the
Sure.
public school system.
Yeah.
There was not a pool to be found in my elementary school,
Yes.
junior high school, and Martin Van Buren High School. If there was one, I never got invited to swim. So tell me, how do you teach swimming when there may not even be a pool available for these students?
Sure. So on the swimming side of things, again, a little bit different from the water safety. They pair together, but they are distinct. Yes, New York City is an aquatics desert. It's terrible that a preeminent global city such as ours has so few public pools that are available year-round and that are multi-use and that could be available to actually teach the swimming skills. Well, let's move that aside for a moment and talk about the training. The program that we've developed can be delivered in the school classroom, has nothing to do with water. It has everything to do with teaching about the climate. So swimming skills lives in this context, broader context of the environment. And if we understand the environment and how water plays in that continuum, then we're going to be much more knowledgeable when we need it, whether we see it in our own home, which of course we do, whether we go outside and we see it in any variety, a swimming pool, an ocean, a lake, a river, a pond, etc., or seasonality through the year. So now we're going through the hurricane and tropical storm season. Now we're coming next up to the winter, and we always have people falling through the ice, and many of those are not saved. All right, so we talk about how to self-save through the ice if you fall through. And then, of course, the other thing in the spring for most of the other states around the country, they've had to worry about flooding. For us now, that has become a year-round issue. And not even because of rain, but think back in our summer, we had these huge moons, right? These super moons, and they created super high tides. It's called sunny day flooding. And so the tide comes up to where it would on the high tide level, and then it gets pushed further in, but there actually is no place to go. So it pops up onto the roadways. And we have been inundated with these types of flooding situations. We never had them before. We don't know whether it's safe to cross that water or not. We're not educated to that.
Well, Shawn, are the legislators up in Albany supporting the organization? Do they see this as something that is really vital to the community? What is the feedback you're getting?
Yes, so the two individuals that really embrace this are Senator Joseph Adabo and Assembly Member Stacey Pfeffer-Amato. Both of them have the Rockaways as a large part of their footprint, their legislative footprint, and clearly they know how important this is because the Rockaways are a peninsula that have the ocean, 11 miles of ocean on their front doorstep, and Jamaica Bay, which is huge, on their back doorstep. And oftentimes, the ocean waters have met the bay waters. This was not even Superstorm Sandy I'm referring to. These are just large storms and even nor'easters. In the winter, we've had this kind of wicked weather. So yes, by all means, they certainly do. And there are others that are also as avid about this.
All right, so let's say somebody's watching today, one of the viewers maybe wants some tips, either just learning how to swim or just learning
Sure.
how to protect themselves in flooded waters. Where can they go? Where would you steer them?
So of course they can come onto our website, which is swimstrongfoundation.org, and look in our blogs. We have a lot of information about that there. We also have the Know Before You Go program available for families or individuals. It's in a lighter format than it would be for in the school, but it touches on all of the same topics to help people get a baseline of understanding.
Well, listen, Shawn, this has been great. There's so much we could discuss. It's such an important topic.
Yes, it is.
Hopefully you can come back maybe in the next couple of months. Let us know how things are going up in Albany and how successful, hopefully, your organization has been in getting these bills passed.
Super. Well, we can only be successful, David, if everybody gets involved. And we do actually have a bit.ly, which I will share with you that maybe you can put up as
Please
well, to have people sign so their own assembly folks will be able to get out and support the bill.
And hopefully we can do that. All right, Shawn Slevin, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stay with us. Today's Verdict has so much more right after this. Well, that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank our three guests for joining us, and of course you, the viewers, for watching. If there is an issue that you would like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, just email me at davidlesch@bronxnet.org. Until the next time, know your issues, reach a verdict. We'll see you in 2 weeks.